imagine. So every culture, listen, every culture in every part of the world has used some form of confession and self-examination as a process to a deeper spiritual awakening. Alcoholics Anonymous put it into a progressive written program of the 12 steps in a self-titled book in 1939. So we have an outline of all of the steps in the big book. They're contained in the first 164 pages. And then the personal experiences or the personal stories in the other part of the big book are how people related themselves to the 12 steps. Well, in 1953, Bill Wilson published another book called The 12 and 12, as many of us know. The 12 and 12 was meant primarily to get the traditions into print. But if he would have just done the traditions, it would have been a very small book. It would have been a pamphlet. It wouldn't have been a book. So Bill, this is really good stuff. Bill, by happen chance, we'll call it that, but we all know it was under the guide of a loving, caring God, sent this little Jesuit priest to downtown New York City to the AA central office in the early 40s to meet Bill Wilson. And this guy's name was Father Edward Dowling. And Father Edward Dowling became Bill's sponsor. Who can sponsor the first guy in AA? Think about that. And you know, that would have been a hard row to hoe, but it would have been even additionally hard for Bill Wilson to confide in someone. So it had to have been someone that was not necessarily removed from alcoholism, but had a deeper guiding spiritual light. Do you agree? Amen. And this Father Dowling, I mean, if you know anything about the Jesuits, they're like the Marine Corps of the Roman Catholic Church, you know. If you want something done or you need business taken care of, you call the Jesuits and they send in the troops, you know. But this guy, Father Edward Dowling, was just afflicted with rheumatoid arthritis. He could barely walk. He walked up several flights of stairs in a cold, sleeting rain to meet Bill Wilson and say, I'm going to be your significant spiritual advisor. And they began this relationship. So how does that fold into the 12 and 12? Well, Father Edward Dowling Bill confided in Father Dowling about his own problematic deep depression, which he was suffering with for almost 15 years until literally the 12 and 12 came into print. And what happened was, what relieved that obsession or that depression was this. He wrote essays on the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. That with the traditions and the concepts made up the 12 and 12, which became a printable book. And it's a good-sized book. And I don't want to say that the steps were embellished, they were expounded, right? We got a deeper side or a deeper understanding to these 12 steps. Did we get it up there? Let's give Pepper a hand. and of course, Scotty T. they're the people in the back that make it happen. And 5 minutes before the music began, I said, Pepper, can you get something on the screen for me? And he goes, of course. And he did. Thank you so much, my friend. So what I brought tonight was I brought an actual outline of the way that Lori and I do the 4th step with our sponsees. And, you know, I'm going to go through this, but I'm going to actually add into it. And I want to caution you first. Do not use these on your own. Let me say that one more time. Do not go to that place without a good guide. Someone that has been there, done that, and can help you through not only the readings that it entails, but the filling out of each individual inventory sheet. And, you know, it's It's rewarding, it's fulfilling, and it will actually change your life. So we need to first establish a need for this thing we call a 4-step. And I'm going to read some of the excerpts out of the big book in the 12 and 12. And I'm also going to initiate some scriptures that go along with this 4-step inventory. But first of all, in order to establish a need, we must look at page 52. And it says this: we were having trouble with personal relationships. It said we couldn't control our emotional natures. We were a prey to misery and depression. We couldn't make a living. We had a feeling of uselessness, and we were full of fear. We were unhappy. We couldn't seem to be of real help to anyone. When we saw others solve their problem by a simple reliance upon the spirit of the universe, we had to stop doubting whether the power of God could truly help us because our ideals no longer worked. Can you agree with that? And you know, I'm an addict and an alcoholic, but I came to my tribe, if you will, through Alcoholics Anonymous. And I don't want to single anybody out by being an advocate for AA, but that's the literature that I work in and I study in. I also study the God's Word pretty deep. But with that being said, I'm not trying to single anyone out. If you like the basic text, then you stay in that basic text. If you've got other material through CA or SA or anything on the other A's, you stay in that. So I'm not trying to single anybody out or make me look any better because I'm an AA guy. It's just where my tribe is, okay? Yeah, thank you. Again, I want to stress the importance of a sponsor. And a sponsor is more than a guide. A sponsor is more than a friend. A sponsor is someone that you're going to dump all your trash on his or her lap. And you know, that trash, it sounds very insidious, it sounds dirty, and it sounds too revealing for us to be able to actually be okay with. But you know, and if you have a sponsor that's done this before, it's another hat trick. It's something else that he's done or she's done, and they're going to share their experience, strength, and hope, and the mess that came out of their 4th step that'll coincide pretty much side by side with what you're ready to share also. So it's very important to have a sponsor. From even step 0, that's before step 1. From even step 0, you need a sponsor to help you through this thing we call recovery. Another thing you need before you do 4-step is the first 3 steps completed. And that certainly helps. And you know, if you have a sponsor that just has you read something, and I'm not trying to diss anybody's sponsor, but you're not doing a bit of writing, even if you have problems reading and writing, if they're not willing to come alongside you and help you or dictate for you, then you're missing out on a lot of the wealth that you're going to experience in this thing we call the 4-step. So, you need a sponsor, first and foremost. You need to do the first 3 steps, right? And then when you roll up to step 4, you're going to see a couple different things. In the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, there's what we call vertical columns. There's 3 of them. And that's how the first 4-step was constructed. And the whole premise of that was basically it was like an accounting type of a paper, I guess, and it would list liabilities and it would list assets, and that's where this formula of vertical columns came from. But as we go into the 12 and 12, it's something much deeper. There's 32 questions concerning the 4th step and the 12 and 12. And what I like to do, and what Lori and I have kind of done together, is we introduce both of these into the 4th step. And you're going to see up there, these are our inventory sheets as they're known and as you would get if we were your sponsor. And listen, I've got enough sponsees. I'm not out here trolling for more sponsees. Okay, so step 4. The first thing you're going to do in step 4 is you're going to look up the principle. The principle is what? Courage. Oh, that was ridiculous. The principle of the 4th step is what? Courage. Right. You're going to look up the definition of courage, and then you're going to look up the definitions of moral and inventory. And I forgot to mention, you're going to need a 70-page spiral-bound notebook and a pen, listen, and a pen that fits in the spiral. You know why? I don't want to hear that you forgot your pen. I don't want to hear that I left my notebook at home. Because here's one of the things. You keep your notebook with you at all times. You mean all the time? All the time. There's a lot of work that you've done in 1, 2, and 3 in there that brings you right up so you can literally come up to step 4 and kind of put it in park to start this inventory. And this is what happens next. In your notebook, make 4 columns with the heading of resentment, harm, money, or debt, and sex above each column. Yeah, we're going to talk about that stuff. Under each column, list the name of the person, place, or thing you have a resentment against, you have harmed, you owe money to, or had sex with. You guys get this? Some names may appear in more than one column. You may have had sex with them, owed them money, and have a resentment because they harmed you. So there would be how many pages for that particular person? 4. Is this making sense? You're going to read the second half of how it works. That's where you find the 4th step, by the way. In the big book, they're on pages 64 through 71, and this is it. You're going to read step 4 in the 12 and 12. Now what? Well, you're going to make a copy of the worksheets. Pepper, can you kick that up for us? And there's your worksheet. There's your inventory worksheet. Now, every person under every heading comes onto one of these sheets, and you're going to end up making a lot of sheets. Sheets and sheets and sheets. But some of you goody two-shoes may only make a couple sheets. And that may be because you're not willing to expose all of the stuff that actually took place. But that's all right. So the first thing on the sheet, the first question is who? Who's the person? Back in step 0, we had you write a list of names of all the people you know. I'll say that again. Back on step 0, you even have to write stuff in step 0. We had you make a list of all the people that you know. And if you don't recall their name, you would write something descriptive of them that would allow you, this inventory is not for me. This inventory is not for your sponsor. This inventory is for who? Yourself. For you. Something descriptive that you could recall that person. Now, why would you want to write all them names? Here's the first thing, the first reason why you want to do it, because I want to see how sincere you are about doing the work. And if you start balking at the very first thing on step 0, our time as sponsor and sponsee, and I'm not trying to sound arrogant, is short-lived. I'm not in this for fame. I'm not in this to pump my ego. I'm in this to help you live. And help you change and help you experience a life that's better than anything you could have ever imagined. And if you're not serious about it, I don't have time for it. I'm sorry. And I think if more people took that stance as sponsorship, in their sponsorship, there would be a lot more affirmative action in this thing we call recovery. The first thing you're going to do is put who it is and what it was. Was it a resentment? Do you owe them money? Did you have sex with them? Or did you harm them or did they harm you? Remember them 4 categories? So we've already established who. Now we're going to find out what happened. And then number 2 is the cause. This is what we call why. Who, what, why. Do you see what it says up there? It says limit to 12 words. Why would that be? I don't want an essay on every one of these sheets. And if you go back to the first recorded inventory sheet as it's written in the 3 vertical columns in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, that's how many words are in that description of why. 12. Again, we're trying to get to the facts. We're not writing a novel. We're not doing a biography. We're just getting the stuff out so you can share it and move on from it. And why would you want to sit in the middle of that and get all yucky? I don't know. Good question for sure. So we've got the who, we've got the what, we've got the why. This is the dicey part that really kind of, it trips a lot of people up. And in order to understand what this means is that number 3 is it affects my what? My relationship with others, my self-esteem, my security, and my sex relationships. Well, we have to look a little bit deeper into what that is. And these are our God-given basic instincts. Listen, they're innate. Innate. I-N-N-A-T-E. That means that they're not learned. That means that you're born with them. That means that you don't have any type of schooling or teaching that helps you to render these because you are born with them. You cry when you have a poopy diaper. You cry when you need to be fed. You get it? It starts from the minute you come out, you start these behaviors, these instinctual behaviors. These instincts are behaviors that are present from birth and they do not require learning or experience. They are crucial, listen, for survival, for reproduction, and social interaction. And they're broken down into 3 categories. The first is my survival instinct. That's where I get security. This is a fundamental drive to protect oneself and to ensure that I continue to exist. It includes supplying the need of food, clothing, and shelter, and self-preservation against threats of harm. That's the first one. The second one is a sexual instinct. This encompasses the drive for sexual activity and reproduction, which is essential for the continuation of the human species. I won't spend too much time on that right now, but we will come back to that. Social instincts. This drives us to form relationships and to create social structures with others. Did you know we're involved in a social structure right here through Recovery Church of Sarasota? This social structure is like-minded people communing, having a common interest in recovery and Jesus Christ as their higher power. Thank you for being here tonight. There's something else up there, though. Uh-oh. Okay, it's back up there. There's one thing in there that needs a little more explanation. You see that one right below relationship with others? It's self-esteem. It's a relationship with self. And I want to get into that a little bit, but first I want to do this. The Word of God views human instincts as natural desires, like those for food, water, shelter, and sex, as being inherently good. Okay? However, the Bible warns us that when these instincts become selfish desires and would pursued without regard for God's will, they become evil. Evil it simply means against God and sinful. When selfish desires collide with unhealthy emotional responses, relationships become a battlefield. James 1:14 and 15 says this: temptation comes from our own or our selfish desires, which entice us and drag us away. The desires give birth to sinful actions, and when sin is allowed to grow, it gives birth to death. This passage explains that each person is tempted when lured by their own desires. And that when desires give birth to sin, the sin, when it's fully grown, brings forth death. That's a consequence of sin. Now, is that a physical death? Absolutely. But it's even deeper. It's a spiritual death. It's a death of relationships. It's a death, listen, it's a death, an absolute break from God and others. Do you understand that? I'm getting worked up. I'm spitting all over the front row. This thing we call self-esteem, essentially it's an individual's overall sense of their own worth or their value. It encompasses how they feel about themselves, their capabilities, and their place in this world, where you stand in this world. It involves a positive or a negative evaluation of self, including feelings of self-acceptance. Listen to all these selves in self-esteem. Self-acceptance, self-respect, and self-belief. Self-esteem is not innate. It is learned by life experiences and how we process or interpret them. While self-esteem is internal experience, it is also shaped, listen, it's shaped by external factors. You get that? The effects are inside of us, but the external factors are the things that propel that. Self-esteem encompasses the ability to accept you for who you are, flaws, warts, and everything. All of that without excessive self-criticism. You hear that? Another self in there. It involves having respect for you and your values, which helps making decisions and maintaining healthy relationships. There's two categories of self-esteem. Healthy self-esteem, you like and you value yourself. You make decisions and you assert yourself with little or no effort. You are willing to try new things. You can show kindness to yourself. And you can move from your past mistakes. You believe that you matter and are good enough. You guys getting this? Am I getting too heady? Am I getting too psychological? Some of this stuff you share on a couch for $250 an hour, right? And you can come to AA and get it for $2 a meeting, right? Healthy self-esteem says this: you believe that you deserve happiness. So what's the other self-esteem? Low self-esteem, unhealthy self-esteem. You often think badly of yourself. You feel unhappy and unsatisfied. You may hide away from social situations. You may stop trying new things for fear. And you may avoid things that you find challenging. If it's not easy, it's not worth it. Number 4. There you go. Number 4, fear. What were you afraid of? Let's go back to that sheet there, Pepper. So number 4 gives us, what was I afraid of? I want to expound on that a little bit. And we find this actually in the 7th step in the 12 and 12, and it's on page 76, and I'll read it to you. It says, the chief activator of all of our character defects has been self-centered fear. Primarily fear that we would lose something we already possess, or would fail to get something that we demanded, or something that we want, you know. You know how we are. When we want it, what do? We demand it. And when we don't demand it, we jump around like little 4-year-olds in a temper tantrum, throw ourselves on the floor and scream and holler. Oh, okay.
Getting really personal, Bob.
Living upon a basis of unsatisfied demands, we are in a state of continual disturbance and frustration. Therefore, no peace, this is still in 12 and 12, therefore there's no peace was to be had unless we could find a means of reducing these demands. The difference between a demand and a simple request is plain to anyone. You don't have to run around demanding. You don't have to run around expecting. Say please. Say thank you. Number 5. This is something that we just check off. Was I selfish? Was I self-seeking? Or was I dishonest? What is it that I wanted? Again, you get 8 words to describe what you wanted. How did I feel? List the emotions that apply. What emotions are we talking about? I'm glad you asked. God, our Creator, has also given us primary emotions. These enhance and protect our basic, innate human instincts. These are broken down into 6 categories. All of your emotions, every emotion you feel, fall into one of these 6 categories. The first one is love. That's a primary emotion that's for God and each other, and it gives us belonging in relationships. The second one is joy and the pursuit of it because it improves our quality of life. How many of you want joy? Yeah. How many of you want to feel love? Yeah. How many of you want a sense of belonging? These are all good emotions, right? Fear. Fear. It's a reaction to perceived danger, and it's crucial for survival. But how many of you know we took that a little too far? Anger. Listen. Anger and aggression are stances against threats, and they ensure protection for self-preservation. All of these are God-given emotions, and they were given to us for a specific purpose. Excitement. Who likes excitement? Excitement drives us to explore, learn, and acquire new experiences. And sadness. Sadness is essential to mourning the loss of something or someone. All of these 6 primary emotions help build and ratify and support our instinctual behaviors. When our emotions become raw nerves and negative obsessive thinking has been filtered through the feelings of low self-esteem, we are in danger of, listen, emotional insecurity. The 12 and 12 speaks very spot on about this thing we call emotional insecurity. And you know, we don't hear that word much in the big book. But the 12 and 12 is just littered in it when it's talking about steps, and specifically step 4. It refers to the feeling of vulnerability or doubt of one's abilities or where we stand in this world. It's often characterized by a lack of confidence and a fear of rejection or judgment. I'm going to read you an excerpt out of the 12 and 12, and this is on page 52, and it says the most common symptoms, this is how you can self-analyze if you might have a tinge of emotional insecurity. The most common symptoms of emotional insecurity are worry, anger, self-pity, and depression. These stem from causes which sometimes seem to be within us. Listen, where did we hear this before? And at other times to come from without. To take inventory in this respect, we ought to consider carefully all personal relationships which bring continuous or reoccurring trouble. How many of you had problems with relationships? I won't ask how many still do, but we know who we are, right? The key characteristics of emotional insecurity are a lack of confidence, fear of rejection or judgment, a need to be validated. If you're suffering with this, you may seek constant reassurance and validation from others so that you can feel good about yourself. Listen, this emotional insecurity and ability to form a true partnership with another human being. Wow. And it goes on. I'm going to skip over that part because I'm seeing time and she's giving me that thing. But you under control. All right, we hit that one. You're not supposed to laugh so hard, woman.
Go in more detail, please.
We compare ourselves. We constantly compare ourselves to others. We have avoidance behaviors because some situations just are too uncomfortable. We have difficulty with boundaries. What are the causes of emotional insecurity? Childhood experiences? That's a lot of it. Trauma. Social factors like prejudice or discrimination. Number 7, why did I behave like this? I love this because on page 44 into 12 and 12, right smack dab towards the last 2/3 of step 4, it says this: to avoid falling into confusion over the names of these defects, character defects, Bill is talking about, let's take a universally recognized list of major human failings, the 7 deadly sins. Pride, an excessive sense of self-importance and arrogance, greed, excessive desire for material possessions, envy. This is where resentments are born out of. I don't know about you, but prior to coming to any type of recovery, I really didn't hear the word resentment much. If I did, it didn't apply to me, although I had a heavy bag full of them, right? But what I did hear a lot was envy. And envy, in biblical terms, is covetousness. You get it? But out of that is born this thing we call resentments or jealousy of another's possessions or achievements. Wrath. We're still on this deadly 7. It's uncontrolled anger and a desire for revenge. Lust. Excessive or uncontrolled sexual desire. And gluttony. And gluttony is probably the most misrepresented. If we had addictions such as drugs and alcohol fall into one of these 7 deadly sins, it would be all of them. But primarily it would be gluttony. And gluttony is an overindulgence of food and drink, or in one word, called consumption. Of what? Of more. Of more. More of what? What you got?
Anything and everything.
You know? I love that song that you got that all right? How many Skinner fans do we got here? I tried everything in my life. The things that I like, I tried them twice. Okay. These sins are considered deadly because they are believed to be the root causes of all other sins. All of your other sins come out of this. So in this number 7, why did I behave like this? You're going to start listing why. This is why. This is why. We're going to sit down. We're going to talk about this. And you're going to list them out. Why? You, not me. I'm not going to list them out for you. You're going to list them out for you. Whose inventory?
Yours.
That's right. 1 John 2:16 says, for the world offers only a craving for physical pleasures. A craving for everything we see. And pride in our achievements and our possessions. They're not from the Father, but they are from this world. I know I've got one more here. It says, what can I do different? Now we're going to slide into the solution. And on page 53 of the big book, it says, when we became alcoholics, crushed by self-imposed crisis, we could not postpone or evade. We had to fearlessly, that means without fear, that means totally immersed in courage. We had to turn and face the proposition that either God is everything, it's either he is or he ain't. You're either on that side of the fence or this side of the fence. There's no more walking down that middle. Wow. I know, I'm almost done. You're going to give me another 5? Okay, I'll back up then. I got another page here.
I can't.
This was 26 pages, and I trimmed it down to 8.5.
Wow.
I know, right? Galatians 5:16 through 17. If you want to really get some good reads, I do another teaching. It's more of a biblical teaching on Galatians, specifically Galatians 5, and I call it nuts and fruit. and nuts is the way we act when we're out there. Yeah. And nuts is what keeps us indulged in these 7 deadly sins. And then fruit is the rewards that we get when we live by the Spirit. Are you guys following that? It says this, Galatians 5:16. So I say, let the Holy Spirit guide your life. This is Paul speaking to the church of Galatia. He says, then you won't be doing what your sinful nature craves. You have a sinful nature. That was also innate. And it came from the first 2 human beings in the world that were created. And that's Adam and Eve. And they sought to seek out what God told them to don't worry about. And sin was born, and it has become a generational curse from Adam and Eve to this generation today. The sinful nature wants to do evil, which is just the opposite of what the Spirit wants. And the Spirit gives us desires that are the opposite of what the sinful nature desires. These 2 forces are constantly fighting each other so that you are not free to carry out your good intentions. You know where that battle takes place?
Your mind.
Yeah, that 8-pound mass that we call your brain that's fixed between your 2 ears. That's the battlefield of the mind where good and evil prevail. And one is constantly struggling for complete obedience. And here's the thing. Evil will press and tempt and test. But good will always be available. Yeah, I'm almost done. I'm going to wrap it up here. I got another 2 pages, and I'm going to be done. And all this information tonight concerning step 4, there was no mention of your using. Because step 4 is about cause and effect. Our using was only a symptom of a much bigger problem. A thorough 4-step will give us the courage to continue into the light of the Spirit. And may God bless you all. Thank you.